our interview is going to be part of a series that helps women understand what's going on in the hearts and minds of men, because to women, men are often a mystery. And I really want to specifically zero in on what's going on in the hearts and minds of men in the dating process, because most of my audience are single women, tend to be a little more mature single women, 40s, 50s, 60s. And many of them have had success in other areas of life, but have had a difficult time or a challenging time, or not the success or hope that they want in their relationships. And the dating process is quite frustrating for a lot of them. And they don't quite understand where men are coming from the time a man decides to ask someone out to whether he decides to continue to date her and what that process looks like, all the way to potentially getting to a commitment and even marriage. And of course, I recommend your book, Mars Venus on a Date, so often, but I'd love to explore, just kind of from the male point of view, a little bit more about what's going on in the dating process. I'm leaving it kind of wide open because there's so much there, but I know you have a lot of wisdom to share with us in this area.
Well, Michelle, I love talking with you, and I hope that you will interrupt me and ask questions because I could talk 5 hours straight on the ideas in that book, Mars Venus on a Date. But we really, if we want to get into the minds of men, we do it from the perspective of how I do it from the perspective of how it's different from the way women think. So that gives it relevance. Okay, so if we thought just the way women thought, we wouldn't be such a mystery. If we thought just the way women thought, you wouldn't be attracted to us. Ultimately, it's differences that create attraction. And that's the first little piece of dating advice right there. What makes a relationship work is similar values. Okay, so you have to have certain values. Like all my wives, I was married to Barbara for 2 years, married to Bonnie for 34 years, married to my present wife now for 3 years. Similar values is really what holds it together. And for me, that is sincerity and spirituality and love. Those are real big priorities for me. And sincerity is honesty, it's integrity, it's a good guy. I don't cheat anybody. I don't want to cheat anybody. And so any woman who reflects that will be attracted to me, and I'll be attracted to her because of that similar value. But next to similar values is differences. Okay, so my wife, Bonnie, we had different perspectives, and we could easily harmonize those because we have similar values. But the differences is what creates the attraction. She was really into making the home look beautiful. And I really appreciated that, but I'm not that neat. So, so there's this ultimate conflict that goes on inside of our relationship, which is I'm a bit messy. She's a bit overly neat. So if I'm messy, it's a very frustrating thing for her. If she's trying to get me to not be messy, that's a frustrating thing to me. So those are the differences. It's those differences that we had to learn how to harmonize and work together in that. So that the potential conflict has to be there because you have different points of view on things. I like to work hard, and she likes to have more time for the relationship. So there were places of compromise that we both had to make there. This is just an example. I'm just coming up with a few of the examples of where we're actually very different. And what I'm saying to women is don't look for the guy who thinks just like you do. He has similar values that you can admire and respect, but it doesn't have to be you're the same. Because if you really are the same, there's a great episode of Seinfeld, for those that watch the Seinfeld episodes, where Seinfeld, a comedian, he's always looking for love, and he finds this girl, and he has this great relationship with her for a couple of weeks, and then they break up. And George, the other guy, says, "Why'd you break up?" He says, "Well, she's so funny. I would give my jokes, but she always knew the punchlines. It's like she knew it. We think just alike. And so I want to be in a relationship because I don't want to be with just me all the time. I want somebody different from me." So there has to be that difference. And if you kind of look at it from a spiritual point of view, we're drawn to someone who's different from us in order to integrate that part of them that's not like us, but actually is within us. Ultimately, men are drawn to women when they are to connect with their own female side. So I can be a man single and just try to be more feminine, and my masculine will weaken. And this is any man who's single who has addictions. Addictions is when you're on your female side. You're depending on something outside yourself for happiness rather than depending on your actions for your happiness. Now, that's pure masculinity. Now, men don't always know that about themselves, but I'm telling you, if you look at a man who's happy and fulfilled, his happiness and fulfillment isn't coming primarily from a girl or a woman. It's coming from his own work. He feels good about himself. He's of service to the world. He feels good on a biological level. He's making a lot of testosterone by working. Then, as a result of that, he now wants to share the fruit of his actions. He wants to share the fruit of his actions, and that gives him a new level of fulfillment. So there's like a learning curve for guys, which is I want to be successful. So I get a certain level of success, and then I'm going to feel like I'm not happy with that, because what I need is to be able to share that with somebody, because ultimately that's what masculinity is about, whether men know it or not. They don't always have the introspective awareness, but when they read my books, they go, yeah, this is just as I think. I validate their tendencies. But, we think of men as noble men who give up their lives to protect their families, to protect their countries, to do anything for a woman that she doesn't want to do. And ultimately, that was the world we came from, where men did dirty jobs, dangerous jobs, difficult jobs, and didn't complain about it. They were happy to do it. They don't whine about it. They don't say it's unfair working conditions. They don't say anything. They don't complain. That's masculinity. It's not a victim. But then what they would do is earn their money, and then they want to bring it to the woman to make her life better. And that's what would open his heart. So biologically, we don't have the estrogen that women have. Women have to make 10 times more estrogen just to be happy, and 20 times more estrogen than a man in order to feel romantic feelings. This is really different. Now, what produces estrogen? Estrogen is produced when you're depending on someone for something. So as a woman, you're being attracted to a guy. There's a part of you that goes, oh, this is a guy. He might listen to me. He might have money. He can support me. He might be charming, and he will appreciate me, love me, care for me. So in the beginning, you're living in a fantasy. Your imagination is saying, look what I can have. Look what I can get. Look what might be. And so it's like, what am I going to receive? Because that's what estrogen's all about. Estrogen is trusting others to give to us what we need. And that's the foundation of romance for a woman, is that I, as a man, my excitement is I see a woman who needs help. Every romantic novel is always, he's either a billionaire with his own helicopter, or he's a pirate who's adventurous, but he's got gold. He'll face danger. He's tough. There's I forget what the other stereotypes are, but it's men who can provide something to fulfill a woman's needs. And one of the challenges for women today in the dating circle is they become so independent. That's testosterone producing, which is nothing wrong with that. It's power, it's security, and all that. But you're not depending on anybody. And if you're not depending on someone for something of value and meaning for you, you don't make enough estrogen to be attractive to the opposite sex. So when you're this competent, capable woman, what's going on inside of a man's mind? He's either thinking, oh, she's too good for me, she'll look down on me, which is true. So many women say, where are the men? And I say, the guys wearing the blue collar shirts. I want a guy who's educated like me. Well, already, you see, women always, and they still do to a great extent, they marry up. There's got to be something they look up to the man for. Now, why would that be? And of course, the simple thing is you tell a high school girl, if you want boys, don't be smarter than them. And so that sounds like, because he has to feel in some way, I have something of value to offer you. And now in this world today, where women make 30% more than men for the same job, and that's if they're educated, and they're making all this money, a man thinks, why does she need me? So he doesn't have his confidence to pursue her, and he's not interested in her. So it's either he doesn't have confidence to pursue her, or he has no interest, because why would I be interested in a woman who doesn't need me? Because if let's say you're a poor woman, and just that you need money, all he has to do is drive a nice car, and you're like, oh, maybe he'll marry me, Ooh, that's great. But once she's making more money, she doesn't need him for that. So what does a woman need a man for? That's the big thing. So in dating, a woman has to become aware that I'm lonely and I'm unhappy being lonely and I need love and I need someone to talk to. I need companionship. I need someone to ravish me. I need someone to make love to me. I see it in the movies, but I want it for me. I can see it there. I can go, yes, that's me. I want that. I want a man who sweep me off my feet. I want a man who'll be interested in me, turned on to me, but patient, knows how to make love. Well, no men know how to do that. My father, my father never knew how to do that. Yet my mother was happy. Why was she happy? Because her goal, her dream was 7 children. She got 7 children. I don't know if she expected 6 boys, but she was a very happy woman because my father made enough money without being stressed out to live in a nice middle class neighborhood where you didn't worry about money. Money was not an issue. I grew up never thinking about money. It was, I mean, I didn't feel like I got hand-me-downs. I got my brother's bicycle, but it wasn't like we were poor or anything and we weren't rich. So it was just wasn't a thought. So I'm living in that place. My mother's very happy because her dream has come true. My dad goes to work. He comes home. He doesn't do any of the romantic things, but they had 7 children. So they were having sex.
Something happened.
Something was happening. We did listen at the door and we'd hear something happening. But they didn't there was nothing to fight about or argue about. There was a lot of love and support there because the primary need that my mother had was a man who didn't get angry with her, a man who worked hard, and a man who was the policeman to help manage these boys, because she could just say, if you don't listen to me, I'll tell your father. And he'd come home and he'd spank you and all that. So we listened to her so we didn't get spanked by dad. And so that was sort of the ideal of the old male-female relationship, which goes on still today in all indigenous tribes. Okay. And I'll just say something about the indigenous tribes that I've lived in the Amazon or in Africa. What you'll see, at least particularly spending the night and sleeping in the village with the Amazon people, the women are having orgasms every night. Okay. Every night. And there's no romantic gestures that men are doing. Men just go face the dirty, dangerous, and difficult, and the women are really grateful for that. And then those men come home, and they're very happy because their wives are turned on to them. Sex is, you want to know what goes on inside of a man? In real estate, it's location, location, location. When it comes to a man's brain, it's sex, sex, sex. And we don't want to say this. It's not polite to say or to think, but it's always going on inside of men. And there's studies that show it, at least for 20-year-old and the 20s men. They have these tests. How often are you thinking about sex? And it's every minute they think about sex. It could be looking at that girl's skirt. It could be looking at that guy driving a sports car, thinking he probably has a good girlfriend. Men are thinking about sex all the time. Who's getting it? Who's not getting it? How could I get it? Why can't I get it? It's always going on. Why is that? Because we as males, mature faster in the sexual arena. A lot of people don't see that as maturity, but actually, as a relationship expert, what I know to be the case is sex is one of the most important things to keep a couple together. It's not the only thing. The other thing is love and communication and cooperation and caring, all of that stuff. Well, that's the maturity that girls have, women have. They have the great awareness of the importance of relationship for happiness in life. And unfortunately, that's being lost by a lot of women, which is to make money more important than love. And men will always make money more important unless they have in a relationship where a woman gives him love. But when men don't get love from a woman, they're stuck over in sex land and money land, and not bad places, but they don't make you fulfilled if you don't also have love. And we look to, whether we know it or not as men, we depend upon, primarily for women, to value love and make love a priority. So in my marriage with Bonnie, after I wrote Men Are From Mars, my gosh, opportunities were everywhere. And I could have made so much more money. I mean, I could go to China and give a talk. I get paid $100,000 for a talk, but I had to fly to
Wow.
China to do it, and then come back home and on that whole journey. It wouldn't be just one talk, maybe a couple of day seminar, and they pay me huge money. So, and this was everywhere. I go to Russia, I go to Turkey, I go, England, anywhere in the world I could go and make huge amounts of money. And she said, honey, we have plenty of money. I need you home. You can go, I don't want you to stay home all the time. I know when we got married, I told her, my job is I teach classes, so I'm going to be away. In the beginning, I was away for 3 weekends a month to pay for the family, to these 3-day classes. So we ended up, once I was more successful, never to be gone in a month more than 9 days. And that was because she required it. She says, honey, if I don't get you that much time, then you're going to have this woman who's all independent and not in love with you. I need something from you in order to feel so much love for you. I can't just have money. Money's not going to do it. If we were poor, money might do it. but once we had this lifestyle and a bank account and so forth, everything changes. And so what changes is, what do you need your partner for? And so this is the whole key for women to understand. If a woman doesn't know inside herself, why do I need a man, and truly value that and feel it, a man's not going to be attracted to her. And now this is a scary thing for women, because particularly independent women, because they've had the experience of being like a pendulum. You go over to your masculine side, which is your independent side, and like a pendulum, you do swing back over here to your female side. But if you go way to your masculine, then you swing way over to the other female side. And after you get to a point where you're having sex in a relationship, for many of these women, they feel extreme neediness. Okay, so it's no longer just I need you. It's I need more than you're giving me. An example would be, one of my clients from Germany, and he has a hot girlfriend in Brazil. Okay, and so they're having sex, and he says, sex is great, but I had to end the relationship, and I need your help. Maybe we can save it. And actually, they did get back together after I gave him a little advice, but part of this was, so I said, so what's the problem? He says, well, we spend all this time together and we have great sex. And then I need to do other things. And I say to her, yeah, I want to go fishing with my friends. And she says, oh, but if you go fishing with your friends for the weekend, I'll miss you. And that hurts. Do you want to hurt me?
Oh.
Do you want to hurt me? I just want to go do that. But in her mind, because there's this lack of awareness, is that when you're needing someone for more than they can give you or should be giving you, it's the worst thing for a man. Then you become needy. And when you're needy, he feels controlled. And she doesn't realize that she's controlling. She doesn't feel she's controlling. She's just telling how she feels, But it hurts when you go. And so I gave him a whole explanation to give to her so she could realize that as men, it's Men from Mars #1. So many of our interviews, we've talked about men needing space in order to repel desire. If a man's with a woman all the time, just when you're with a woman that you care about, what will happen for a man is his female hormones will go up. Estrogen goes up. And when estrogen goes up and testosterone is not going higher, then what happens is his testosterone starts going down. I'll give you an example of that. 2 examples really quick, because this rich research backs up all this stuff, but I could spend the whole time talking about 1 or 2 studies, and I want to give people practical advice. But here's one. If you look at men's testosterone levels, and testosterone gives men motivation, interest, opens their heart to give more to a woman. Okay, so the higher it goes, the more romantic a man can be with a woman. And if you look at averages of testosterone in men, every year it goes down 1%, 1%, 1%. So at 35, there's a certain amount of testosterone. A 45-year-old, it's going to be 10% lower. And already we're starting at such a low level that just in this year, 20-year-olds have 20% less testosterone than just 20 years ago. We've been so feminized by our culture and psychology and the mindset of our culture, along with weight gain. Weight gain is a major testosterone inhibitor. men will get this belly fat, and it happens to all men, almost all men anyway. As their testosterone goes down, their belly fat increases because their estrogen goes up. When men's estrogen goes up, the more men do what they love to do, they like to do, they enjoy doing. Anytime you're depending on something other than yourself for your happiness, your estrogen goes up. There's nothing wrong with that as long as it's not too much. All addictions ruin relationships with men because an addiction means you're overly dependent on something to make you happy. And that inhibits your ability to make testosterone because it produces so much estrogen in the body. So while estrogen is the beneficial, super beneficial in most cases for women, different times of the month, progesterone is more important. But the estrogen, if her estrogen is low, her stress levels go high. And anytime part of the biological wisdom of women is through relationship. It's the major way that women raise their estrogen is when you're depending on others for love and support. When you go to a doctor, you're depending on the doctor for something of meaning to you. You need what he's going to tell you. So you're like, oh, I got a great doctor. I love my doctor. Well, just going to your doctor, your estrogen levels go up. It could be that they're giving you a placebo and it will still work because when your estrogen goes up, your trust goes up, your stress levels go down, and you can digest better. Your immune system works better. You don't, a lot of women overeat. They just eat to the point of pain instead of, it's just like, I got to eat. Well, that's they're feeling stressed. And so they eat because when you're eating, you're depending on something to make you happy. Your estrogen goes up, but it's not a healthy way to raise your estrogen. The healthy way to raise your estrogen is relationship. So in the dating place, your estrogen goes up. That's that falling in love. That's the first stage of dating. Is a lot to say about that, but I'm going to skip over some of the things, but I'll do one important one. If you've had the experience as a woman of having sex on first or second date, and then the guy never calls you back, but it's a pattern. It's in psychology. I didn't invent this, although I've seen it to be true, is that you're basically working out some childhood issue of abandonment from your father. A father who wasn't available to you will cause you to feel attracted to men who are not available to you. So you'll tend to want them to win their love, and that people-pleasing aspect of you will cause you to be turned on to the wrong men. If you didn't have that, you wouldn't be turned on to a man until he got to know you, until he did wonderful things for you, and then you get turned on to him. That's appropriate being turned on, is a man does things that actually raise your estrogen. But danger can also raise your estrogen. So and you're intuitively feeling this is on some subconscious level, this is not the right guy for me. But you'll get all turned on and then think that because danger produces dopamine and dopamine raises estrogen and estrogen creates turn on. So this is a pattern. So if you have that pattern in the first stage, attraction, just know if you're leading with, my God, this guy turns me on, he's the wrong guy. He's the wrong guy. And to the extent that you keep having the wrong guy means that when you find the right guy, you won't be excited at all. And you'll think he must be the wrong guy.
And you're talking about physical attraction here.
Yes.
You're talking about sexual attraction here. And you're talking about women who've had a pattern of being disappointed again and again, or getting involved with quote unquote the wrong men because they've had maybe sex because of the attraction. They've had sex early on in the relationship because of a strong attraction. And then they find themselves thinking, what's wrong? What's wrong here? Why am I not having love come from these relationships?
Yeah, it's very vulnerable. You've had sex with a guy and then he doesn't call you back. Your brain just is going to go into, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
It's a confusing thing. So to avoid that, make sure you wait some time to make sure this guy earns his way in. And the guys that are the wrong guys won't take the time to earn his way in. Just to know
Right.
that.
So in other words, I think, John, and I want to make this really tangible for people listening, you're not saying that attraction's not important. You're saying if you've had these kinds of patterns of having sex early on in a relationship and then having guys disappear and that sort of thing, then you may be following the hormonal or the impulses that lead to sex above and beyond paying attention to who this guy is and how he's showing up and allowing him to have the chance to win you over, to
Yes.
establish a foundation for a relationship before the sex happens.
Okay, that was nicely said. Nicely said. But I really, if you get turned on sexually to somebody you don't know, he's not the right person for you.
Okay, so period. So women
Yeah,
are screaming out there saying, "But I want to be turned on. I want to be attracted to a guy."
yeah, they're on their male side. See, guys have to be turned on right away. When I was a younger guy, well, when I met Bonnie, or my first wife, Barbara, we're married for 2 years, but it was role reversal. But then Bonnie she's more feminine. I'm more masculine. I had to win my way in. I had to woo her. And the first time I wooed her, she failed. I failed. She rejected me. So then I married the easy one, and I'm the wrong guy for her, and she was the wrong person for me. That ended. Then after I healed from that, and I kind of had a job now, I had making money again because I'd been a celibate monk for 9 years. So, I wasn't really established in the world yet. Bonnie was smart. I want a man who can take care of me, who can be.
Right.
And anyway, so then I went back and I won her over. I pursued her. And clearly, she was somewhat attracted to me right away. That was happening. And clearly at that time in my life, I was the wrong man for her because I wasn't yet had a job. I wasn't anchored. We would have had the same problems I had in my relationship with Barbara because I'd be looking to the woman for too much approval. When guys get upset with you, women, it's because they don't feel you're approving of them. In some way, he'll say, no matter what I do, it can't make you happy. He's blaming you, but really what's going on, he's looking too much for you to be happy. Because, if I don't feel good about myself by my work I do and I put forth effort, then I'm looking for love. And so I'm looking for you to love me, even though I'm not loving myself through my own levels of success. So that's a dance that understanding men, when I go into a room and I see Bonnie or I saw Barbara, basically they're out of 15 women there. They're the ones that actually cause me to feel sexual arousal. So there's potential there. It doesn't mean they're the right person, but at least there's potential. You can be a woman and you feel nothing down there, but there could still be potential. You'd be attracted in your mind. You'd find that person to be interesting, curious. I want to get to know them. You don't know exactly what. There's like a mystery there, but there's an attraction, but it's not a sexual attraction. And then you would go on dates. And the way you do dating, as they say, we're going into dating more. He pursues you a little bit. And sometimes men today, because their testosterone is so low and their estrogen is so high, they're like women, they're more empathetic. They can sense, they're more intuitive. And they can sense a woman who's sort of standoffish. And that's the one I'm attracted to, let's say. Well, then I feel like I'll be rejected by her because I have a greater intuitive sense. Historically, men have been kind of like whistling at women, making rude remarks to women coming on. They didn't have
Cat calls.
what was that? Cat
I
calls, right?
said cat calls.
And sometimes women who resented all that stuff, they get older and they kind of miss it, so a little back and forth there. But, we want to be respectful. We want to be not crude or rude. But clearly, if a man's pursuing you, he is sexually attracted to you. That's the case for men. And a woman can confuse herself thinking, if I'm not sexually attracted to a man, he must be the wrong man for me. And if you do have that pattern, I want to emphasize that, of getting turned on right away to men who haven't even earned their way into you, and you don't know them personally and they don't know you. That's more important, that they know you and they're still turned on to you. There's a very funny movie where the older woman, now she's an older woman, she's more on her male side, so she's like, and she didn't have a husband, so she's attracted to this young guy. Okay, so she's attracted to this young guy. And he's like, okay, he wants to have sex with her, and she wants to have sex. And then, so he wants to talk to her first, because he's more a young guy, more on his female side, she's more on her male side. And so he's starting to talk. She says, don't speak. Don't speak. Because if he continued to speak, she'd be turned off. So that's what you want to test a man. You need to speak a lot and see if he can still be turned on to you. Because, then it becomes, you're no longer a fantasy woman, just someone he doesn't know. He needs to get to know you and still be turned on to you. And that's the test. So you want to be authentically you. And when I say authentic, that makes you most attractive if authentically you is also in touch with your need to have companionship, a man who can be there for you emotionally, who can support you. And that's a confusing message, because to be there for you emotionally is the guy that women often call a narcissist. These are guys who are not in touch with their feelings at all. They can be the best listeners that exists. They can be the most grounded people for you. Because what you need as a woman on her male side, you need somebody who won't get ruffled when you begin to reveal the emotional part of you, because it will come up, and you'll and the more you're on your male side, you're embarrassed by your female side, this vulnerability. Many women will say, oh, I cry at the drop of a hat. Other women, I never cry, or I only cry secretly in my room. You need to be able to show emotions and vulnerability, or just simply be vulnerable when you're with a man. And to be vulnerable is to have the message in your aura around you that you really are looking forward to having a man in your life. It's important to you, that you can't wait to be able to talk to somebody, have a companionship, a guy to make love with, a guy to be close with, a guy who gets to know you, a guy who can share your life, a guy who, even though you're tough and strong, who will protect you, who will be present for you. These are your emotional needs. And guys who are emotional can't give you that. The guys who are not emotional are the best to give you that.